but it also is extremely emotional, but it can be a really wonderful time to get to be a part of other people realizing their dreams. So you sell the intangible, I get to sell the tangible.
Hello and welcome again. Thank you for joining us in our podcast today in our series of the 7 Keys to Financial Wellness. This is key number 6. The discussion is all about family. It's one of our keys, wealth within families, family values, and a lot of sort of ins and outs that we've experienced personally. We're going to share with you. Maybe you can learn something. But thanks for joining us on our few broadcasts today.
Rob, to kick off this episode, we deal a lot with different families, and as families build wealth, the family dynamics can get really complicated. After years of meeting different families and building relationships with different families and different people, what are some of the things that you've learned about family and wealth?
You know, one of the keys is family, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the definitions that I've built in within the key of family is in quotes, okay? So it's not just the family that you were born into, right? Or grew up with. It could be extended family. It could be your best friends. It could be your friend group.
Right.
It could be, whatever you call your definition of your family is what I deem family. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then you add in sort of the wealth component or the financial component or the lending and the borrowing component or the inheritance component, right?
Right.
Then
that
it becomes
can be complicated.
Multiple layers of complexity. And, a lot of people think, okay, if you don't have any money, then life's easy and simple with regards to wealth within family. No, it's not true, because everyone's always going to hit you up for money anyway, right? We'll talk about that in this episode. Or, you have a lot of money. Well, a lot of more money, more problems, right? There's a lot more complexity there. And then there's, especially if you have next generation, we call it G1. So the generation that grew and accumulated the wealth, and then G2, G3, sometimes G4, right? The multiple generations of kids, grandkids, and great-grandkids. And so I think one of the best ways to start and think about that is everyone, whether you have a lot or a little, one of the best practices to I think you indicated this in the front end, is to have a value system, right? Have a structure of what your kitchen table, your conversation at your kitchen table is, and what you believe, your value structure is, so that you, your partner, your spouse, you're all on the same page. Okay.
Right.
Especially if you're a family, you want to be on the same page financially speaking. It's not always easy. But once you create that value structure, your mission, what's important to you,
right?
Especially like socially and in the community, who, and what organizations you want to support, and then share that, right? Have that family mission and vision and value structure. And why that's important is because, let's say we deal with a lot of wealth within families and we have a lot of conversations.
Right.
And let's say grandma and grandpa has built this and amassed this estate, and they need to have that conversation with the multiple generations, because it's not just about transferring the money, right? If you have your team, your financial advisor, your estate planning team, your tax team, and you do the planning on the front end, transferring the wealth, it's kind of the simple part if you have all your team working together, your network of support, and your ducks in a row.
Right.
It's transferring the values, right? Separate from the money. And chances are the generations below, let's say grandma and grandpa, are going to have a different value structure, okay, which is okay. We see that all the time. But it's the front end, it's the value structure, it's the communication, it's working with your network of support. It's a lot of work. And that helps sort of preemptively, sort of deal with issues that could become issues later on. Let's say inheritance, let's say feelings of, inequality within a state, or all of the above. But I think the front end is the value structure, what you believe in, what's important to you, what you prioritize and spend money on, what you save money on, what let's say what your debt strategy is, how you're going to take care of that on your personal balance sheet. So that's critically important. And that's one of the keys that we talk about all the time. And it comes down to your why, right? Just start with, if you don't know where to start, what I would recommend is just take a blank piece of paper, quiet space, and, some are motivated by money. Some are motivated by giving back. Some people are motivated by completely other, reasons, So find out what makes what you tick internally, and then start communicating that with your partner, your spouse, or your friends and family of whoever you're in a relationship with as it relates to that.
I completely agree. And you kind of noted on this, but sometimes people's immediate family isn't exactly the people that they lean to deal with their finances. And as financial planners, we have the opportunity to be able to be those people that people can lean on, and we can be their family, I guess you could call it, that they lean on to pass their values down through generations. But how, as a financial advisor through the years, have you had the opportunity to facilitate that with families? So if a family isn't talking about that at their kitchen table, grandma and grandpa aren't talking about that with their kids, how are we able as financial advisors to be the ones that facilitate them passing down their values?
Great question. And there's two ways from our side that we can help and facilitate. The first way is to sit down with the generation that we're talking to, and again, what's their value structure, what's their why, what are their goals, what's their mission for their overall sort of estate plan, and how they see it all playing out, right? We run the clock forward and say, if we're not here today, what's important to you, right? And oftentimes it's hard to communicate that. So what we can do is facilitate a family meeting, right? We'll go to the next generations. We'll create a safe space, our boardroom or conference room. We go to place it, wherever they are, and we create a day, and we'll create an agenda, and we'll walk them through, what we pre-discussed, predetermined on the front end of what's important to them. So we basically, and we don't have to talk money. Like It's not about, grandma and grandpa are worth X or Y. This is about, we will do exercises throughout the day of, even with the teenagers, if you will. Okay, if you were given an X amount of dollars, what would you do in your local community, right? And it helps the multiple generations think outside themselves, and you'll get some great stories. Like, let me give you an example. What I do every year for my kids personally to bridge that gap of values, right? They know that mom and dad, Jennica and I, have a value structure. So what I did is, but it can be completely different than theirs, and I'm completely okay with it. And I just want them to think outside themselves, right? I want them to be fiscally responsible, but also community minded. Right. And what's that impact within the community? And it doesn't have to be giving dollars. It could also be volunteering, right? There's two ways of giving back. So on this aspect is, I set up a foundation, right, many years ago. And actually it's separate from this. It's a donor advised fund. And that's what we have the ability to do in our financial services industry. So a donor advised fund is basically a nonprofit vehicle that I set up through Fidelity. Okay. Right. And at the end of the year, every year around Christmas time, we have a family meeting. So Jennica and I have the kids in front of us, and we ask them, they kind of know that it's coming around every year, so they're thinking about this, but we're going to write a check in the name of their charity of choice. So whatever's important to them. So, and we have them do a formal presentation, right? Some of our kids do PowerPoint. When they were younger, they did, sort of a dry erase big board stuff. But it's all the aspects. I want them to sort of do the, Shark Tank pitch to us.
Yeah, that's
I want
great.
them to think about it. I want them to research about it. And, we'll send out, even if it's like $50, $100, from this, vehicle that we set up and set aside. I want them to know that we're behind them. Okay. So one of my daughters, one year, my dad passed away from cancer. So she came to us with, I want to support the American Cancer Society. Another one was the Humane Society, because we love animals. We have four dogs. And so whatever their mission is, I want them to know mom and dad are behind you, and then we're going to support you, because it's not about what I want. It's not my value structure. I want to create that pattern, right, and that muscle memory of getting my kids to think outside themselves. And so that's what grandma and grandpa can do. That's what the parents can do for their children, or even their great grandchildren, to start there. Another way is what we see all the time is grandma and grandpa really don't, maybe not, because older generations don't really talk about wealth within families. They will introduce us to the next generation, or by way of having them come on board as clients, and then the grandkids and great grandkids. I got to tell you, I got multiple kids right now that are in college that we have their 529s. Right. We also have investment accounts for them. And so you've helped several of our clients too. They call you from, we got some kids from USC right now calling. We're all over the United States, and they're calling and watching the market because they have a separate trading account.
Yeah.
And so what's happening is that, grandma and grandpa or mom and dad know that we're, providing them sort of the wings to fly, you know, and it's not a big dollar amount, but it's also getting them also sort of with us training wheels. And oh, by the way, by the time we have 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 interactions over time, over the course of a year, they have that trust with us. And we're talking about investments, but we're also then talking about, hey, did you know that, let's say if grandma and grandpa seeded this account for you, you know, whatever the dollar amount is, we have the ability to then say, hey, I remember your grandma and grandpa, you know, even if they're still with us today, or these values, do you realize how hard it was? Did your grandpa ever tell you the story, what they had to do, your grandma and grandpa, to sacrifice to get these dollars, and how many years it took for them? Have you ever had that story? So what we're doing is bridging the gap separately, but within the family. And that's also a wonderful dynamic as advisors that we have the ability to facilitate.
I completely agree. We have the ability we knew grandma and grandpa, and we knew their values because they shared that with us, and we can help to share that with their grandkids and their grandkids, which is really cool.
It's very impactful.
Yeah.
Very impactful.
Rob, I think that it would be helpful to give some advice just on day-to-day issues with family and friends and wealth, whether it's friends and family are asking for loans or anything like that, just day-to-day.
Oh, this is great. And you know, you're dealing with this on a daily basis. I'm dealing with this on a daily basis. It doesn't matter who you are. This is very relatable. And I'll give you some examples, maybe some techniques to sort of handle this, right? Let's start with, you know, going to dinner. We're going to go to dinner, and let's say one of my daughters in college is going to go to dinner with some of her friends, right?
Yeah.
And my daughter has a very specific budget in her mind, and I'm sure her friend group has a very specific place that they want to go to.
Right.
Right. And maybe it's not my daughter's budget, if you will. So the advice I would give to my daughter, and she's used this before, is be preemptive with regards to this, right? Because what happens is when you're dealing with friends and money, there's always a resentment if you're not communicating properly or proactively.
Right.
So I'd say be preemptively preemptive. Okay. It kind of sounds redundant, and it is, but I say, hey, Taylor, shout out to your friend group and say, hey, listen, just to find out, are we going here? And if so, you know, be honest, be like, okay, is it something that we're set on? Because it's a little bit out of my budget. Can we go and then provide an alternative? Can we go over here? And if they're like, no, it's so-and-so's birthday, it's very specific, it's important, then you also then say, okay, just to be clear, are we going to be splitting checks? Because I'm happy, you know, to take care of, I just want to, so you clear out okay, I can't afford it, but I'm still going to join because it's somebody's birthday.
Right.
It's not that you want somebody else to pick up the slack. It's just hey, is this what we're set on? Because my budget wasn't here.
Right.
We see that with all the, you know, wedding stuff, the bachelor parties, bachelorette parties. They're like, oh, let's go to Bora Bora and have a, you know, and by the time you're done, you know, we have several clients that they've come to us and they're in their 20s. By the time they turn 30, they're like, hey, listen, I've been in like 5 weddings, but it's not just the weddings and the obligation of it. It's like the destinations of the pre-parties just to get there. And they all anticipate and all expect and all these, you know, obligations, financially speaking. By the time I'm 30, I have nothing to show for it but 5 weddings and a hell of a lot of stories. Right. So that is a thing today. That is happening. There's a lot of stress being put on sort of generations because, you know, you might be conscious of your budget. You might be trying to be fiscally conservative and trying to do everything right. But, you know, your friends in your community or your family in your community might not be thinking about that. So just put it on their radar. Not to be a Debbie Downer, but it is one of those things, because let's go to the other side of that. If you don't, you're going to harbor resentment.
Yeah.
Right. Let's say you go and be on that trip and they're starting to do stuff and then they might not know on the other side, oh, okay, Madison, you're trying to live within your means. You got a budget. You're trying to be responsible or whatever. Let me be, you know, maybe I should do that. You know, that's a great point. Like we can have just as much fun at this restaurant. Right. Another one is you love this. You've ever seen everybody like, you know, we're table of 10, right? And whether they split the bill, share the bill, or we can Venmo the difference of the bill, you know, there's always one at the table. Have you heard of the term alligator arms?
No, I haven't.
It's like when the check comes, you go like this. Let me get it. Let me get it. And you're, you know, you pretend, like there's always the 1 or 2 at the table that pretend that they're going to get the bill, but they really can't because their arms are so short. They're alligator arms. So it's that motion of,
that's funny.
And we all know that person. We have that friend or family member. And so you kind of want to know what you're dealing with when you walk into that situation. If you know you know, the first time I get it, it happens. I didn't see it coming. But the second time it's like, all right, if I'm going to lunch, breakfast, lunch, or dinner with that particular person, I better expect it or anticipate it, right? Otherwise, I'm going to harbor the resentment. It just, relationships spiral out of control after that. So I think the alligator arms, I think one of my favorite comedians said it best, and it's Sebastian Maniscalco. And let's say you're the one that is going to be settling up the table of 10, right? Okay. So the bill comes to you because the establishment only wants one check.
Right.
So you're not going to be dividing, 20 credit cards or cash or whatever. And he basically said it best is every time he gets the bill and he's that guy that has to basically figure it up and collect, there's always the other person on the other side of the table, like, because he's looking at the bill, looking at everyone at the table, looking at the bill, and that you're always short, right? And so there's always that one extra person be like, oh, okay, here's the extra $2. Like, think you're going to put you over the edge. $2, we're $600 short. Like, who at the table doesn't think that tax and tip and even paying their own fair share, and like, oh, I got the water, but you got the Coca-Cola. Like, here, there's always that. And so you have to be preemptive. You have to have the conversations walking into it. Hey, we're splitting the bill. Okay, great. Who's going to Venmo what? Because then you also then head off the, oh, I don't have the money, right? Oh, I left my wallet at home, or you got to get ahead of this. And with friends and family, there's a lot of the dynamics as it relates to it.
I agree. Just being upfront with people, and if you expect people to be considerate of that with you, you should be considerate with other people in the same manner.
That's a good point. And a lot of this is interpersonal communications and behavioral finance and how people were raised, right?
Right.
You can't resent somebody for somebody who wasn't raised properly. They might not think that way, right? Financially, we might be like, okay, I'm on a budget, or I want to do the right way. I want to communicate. I want to have friends after the fact. They might not be raised that way. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you can sort of, within your peer group of influence, your friends, your family, start, it's okay to speak up. It's okay to proactively communicate, as I guess my take home point here is, because then you get everyone in the same sort of, this time it's awkward. The next time it's like, okay, we're in a cadence. We all know what to do.
That's so true.
My friend group already expects it. And if somebody else new jumps in the friend group, you can all self-regulate. Oh, by the way, do you have a Venmo account? Yes. Do you have money in it? Yes. Okay, then you're joining. Let's go, do bottle service in Vegas, like literally, because there's always that one person that's always going to be short, and you don't want to exclude them, but you do want to make certain that, like, there's no resentment, right? There's always that financial rub within sort of that whole world of how we all pay for things, right? Let me give you another example as we switch to wealth within families or friends. In college, I always, I had 2 roommates, and rent is always due in the first of the month, right? And I had one roommate who he and I were always good for it, right? Even if I had to get an extra job and I overspent, whatever, I never missed a payment, okay? He was the same way. We had a third roommate who would miss consistently. He was consistently consistent. That's the one thing I can say about him. So in our mind, we always had to basically build in a shortfall. We never told him that. So our own reserves, because we didn't want to get evicted.
Right.
But at the same time, we're always having to be the a-hole with our third roommate, right? And there really wasn't a resolution. It was always spotting him this month, which turned into another month. It turned, and he eventually made it right. But we're all dealing with that, and it's not the easiest thing to deal with. But again, I think that was me at 20-something years old. Yeah. What I know now is a lot different, and I would have handled it differently by way of communication, by way of setting expectations, by way of getting a credit app and a deposit from my roommate before he even became my roommate. I don't know. Like there's certain ways of circumventing this. But I guess what I'm saying is one of the things is lending, right? Right. So one of the key things that we provide advice for our clients with is there's inevitably always maybe a kid, grandkid, or somebody who wants to take a personal loan, right? Right. Wealth within families and lending within families. This is under that category. So if somebody's going to take a loan from you, whether it's your roommate, whether it's anybody in the dynamic, only lend money that you're willing to say goodbye forever. Right. Don't ever expect it back. Okay? And only lend money that you could afford to say goodbye to forever. So don't put yourself out there, right? It's almost like a bad situation. Somebody comes up, hits you up, hey, can I borrow some money? It's like, what do they teach you? God forbid you're in the air and your oxygen masks come down, you put yours on first, right? Make sure you have your reserves. You're not going to, and you're financially going to be okay. Even if you like give them the extra $100, $1,000, $10,000, as soon as you make that mental gift, it's gone.
Right.
Okay. It's gone. Don't expect it back. It does two things. One, it preserves your relationship with that person.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And two, you'll see how it goes. You're just being that good person, that good friend, family member. Everyone gets in a tough spot. So
right.
if you could be there for that person and your reserves are there, then that's a wonderful thing as well. Flip that around. Okay. So you're the one that's asking for the loan. You're the one that's going to say, hey, can I borrow $1,000? One of the key principles when you ask somebody, a friend or a family, for a loan, okay, is make certain that you have a game plan before you ask for that money to pay it back. Okay. Mm-hmm. You already know how you're going to do it. Okay. You're going to be disciplined enough to do it. And you're also going to do two things. You're going to pay it in full and you're going to pay it before it's due. Mm-hmm. So as an example, let's say I need $1,000 for 60 days. Okay. You should, before you ask for that money, have a game plan of, I already know how I'm going to work extra hours, get that extra $1,000 back. And then instead of 60 days, I'm going to hand it to you in 30 or 45 days. Because what that does is that preserves our relationship. And at the same time, then you don't have any issues with, your friend, right? Mm-hmm. You're honoring what they did for you in a respectful way, right? It's just downright respect. And you're also proving to them, I respect you and I thank you for bailing me out of that particular circumstances. And the best part is that, not that you need them in the future, but they're going to be there in the future if you're in a tough spot. But better yet, now you've proven to your friend or family member that if roles were reversed, they can come to you too.
Right.
Right. And that would be the goal of that person saying, hey, listen, thank you for being there for me. My job, financially speaking, moving forward, I'm going to get on the right track. If you ever need anything, door swings both ways and I'm happy to help.
How would you, or what advice would you give to someone that, say, lended money to a family member or friend and it ended up in a bad situation where they weren't getting paid back or they didn't get paid back on time and it caused resentment? Do you have any advice on how to kind of mend that relationship?
Yeah. Cement blocks for shoes. Baseball bat. Yeah, that happens all the time.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like, don't set yourself up psychologically for failure.
Right.
Right.
That's great advice.
So already go into it where if you could afford to lose it and you never want to see it again, then you can be happy with it. The other challenge is let's say you do give $100, $1,000 to a roommate, and then they're going to cover the rent or whatever it is. But then you also know that they're going on Saturday night, right? They're using your money that they just borrowed for you on Monday, and they're having a good old time on Saturday night. Just get better friends. Honestly, that money's gone. You can't teach habits to other people. That's how they were raised.
Right.
I'm not saying abandon your friends or family, but you can tighten up moving forward your network of support. You're an average of the 5 people you hang out with, right? Mm-hmm. Don't get fooled again. Mm-hmm. Right. Because that's going to be one of those things. Can you correct that behavior? Can you ask for that money back? I'm sure, but do it once. That's fine. Don't do it again. Mm-hmm. And then just move on. And then here's what they're going to do. Whether it's this person or somebody in the future, we do this with our kids all the time, right? They'll come to us and they'll have an idea of like, oh, I'd like XYZ for XYZ, right? I want to need some money for this. And this is what we always say is it's not a no, right? It's not that I want to give it to you. It's a no for right now. And that works great. That line works great within family. Okay. Madison, I know that you're looking for, a loan, but it's not a no. It's a no for right now. And here's why. And you can give the financially, I'm not in the right spot, or I need to see some improvement on your part in terms of, let's say if it's my son, I need to see you to be a responsible individual and get your homework turned in on time and maintain grades and GPA. Like at that moment in time, you have the leverage, right? You have the money, but you have the leverage. So then you can start putting some demands on it. It's not that I don't want to do it for you. Mm-hmm. However, in order for me to do it for you, I need you to sort of, again, that just don't go out on Saturday night and then I'll give you the money, right?
Right.
So before you do that, you can have the preemptive conversation of communication so you clear the air. And then if you get sort of a negative reaction or a narcissistic reaction or a child tantrum reaction, you kind of have your litmus test of like, ooh, you hit a nerve.
Yeah.
And they weren't going to honor their end of it's not you. They're not going to honor their end of the bargain, or they're not willing to, and they're going to turn it back on you. You're the bad guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's an emotional baggage of all of that. There's a lot of narcissism, depending upon the personality type, that's built into that. And then that reaction is that litmus test, right?
Mm-hmm. I
Or if they're
agree.
younger generations, it could be, if my son or daughter comes to us and we say no right now, and they're all upset, it's just because my son doesn't want to do his homework, right? He doesn't want to go to these are my conditions,
Mm-hmm.
right? You want what's in this hand. Well, here's what I want from this in return. So when you do this, then I'm happy to do this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those are another sort of little lessons that you have to navigate through. Again, it's never easy. It never is. But
Yeah, it's
start
not.
learning, start tuning into our podcast, and we'll start giving you tips and tricks to help navigate sort of, all the aspects of life and wealth within families and family dynamics and behavioral finance and all the psychology behind it and all this fun, the bookshelf that we have behind us, we can share.
I think it's great advice, and I agree. Since this is our episode on family, Rob, I remember you telling me the story of when you and Jennica first got married, and Jennica was working at Ann Taylor, and you were first starting out in the finance industry. I think that would be a great story for this episode.
Yeah, it's a great story and I'd love to share it. So Jennica and I met in college, dated all the way through. And then when we graduated, we're now in the real world, right?
Right.
So I got a job starting out in the industry, the financial services industry right away, entry level position.
Mm-hmm.
My salary, which I'll tell you in a minute, but it was basically the basic of the basic. Okay. And then Jennica did broadcast journalism and media, right? And she was already producing in Tucson, for an ABC affiliate, 5, 6, and 10. And she worked sort of, through college at the last semester. So we transferred out to here. We decided to raise a family in the Palm Springs area. And right out of the gate, she goes to all the TV stations here looking
Right.
for employment based upon her major. She had a whole bunch of interviews, and it was a good old boys club, totally locked down, not an environment that I nor she wanted to be in.
Yeah.
So we were back to square one. Okay. And so we're sitting here, I'm starting out working, 24/7, 365. We have no kids, and we're, just trying to put it together.
Mm-hmm.
And so she just decides to, okay, I'll get a job at Ann Taylor. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So she starts working at Ann Taylor, then she becomes a manager. I think the story that you're referring to is I'm working nights and weekends as well as Monday through Friday, constantly. And I loved it. Loved working constantly. The only, issue is that Jennica and I had to match up her work schedule and breaks and my work schedule and breaks. Good news is we were just down the street from each other, so we would have lunch and breaks
That's
together.
nice.
But I remember after 8-9 months into it,
Mm-hmm.
I called her. It was like a Saturday, and she's working at Ann Taylor on one of her shifts. And I said, hey, just so you know, I did the math. And she's like, oh, really? What's that? And she's thinking, oh, you're getting a raise or, all this stuff. And I said, no. I said, the hours that I've already put in, the hours that I work on a weekly basis based upon my salary, divide that. I said, I'd be making more money as working at McDonald's right now. I'm making less than $5 an hour, is like $4.62 an hour by the amount of hours I was just putting in. Okay. Because of all the extra time I put in of getting my business off the ground.
Yeah.
And I remember that phone call like it was yesterday. And I remember her reaction was like, something tells me that we're on the right track. Right.
Oh, that's
Because
awesome.
we're putting in the sweat equity.
Yeah.
Fast forward, she worked for retail for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
And then she transitioned to becoming a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I support her and everything we needed to do to make certain that she got her credentials and everything else. And so she was a substitute teacher for a few years while we started having starting a family, because we said, okay, wait a minute, let's get Jennica, if she could be on the same schedule as us, maybe we'll have the summers as a family, right? As a teacher.
Right.
So that was sort of the thought process there of us thinking family planning and then what would be better, because we didn't want her to be in retail and working those hours. And we all wanted to our family was very important.
Right.
So teaching was sort of the next best fit for Jennica, and she's smart smart, brilliant, and could do anything. So she did that. Okay. Next thing we know, she's working as a substitute teacher within the school district. And you have to call in every morning, like 6 a.m. They tell you, okay, you're going to East Valley, Coachella Valley, or you're going over here in Palm Springs, or you never know what you're going to get. Every day is something different. But there's some days where she taught 8th grade in the East Valley and she got a chair thrown at her, right? There's other days where she came home and she's like, yeah, I got thrown up against the wall, in Palm Springs. There's those dynamics where it was rough, right? And then I'm like, oh gosh, here we go again. Okay, so maybe this might not be long-term the right fit. And we started doing real estate ourselves personally. And so we started buying and selling individual properties as we started wanting to build our net worth. Okay. We bought our first home, then we bought a second home, so on and so forth. And I saw what the real estate sort of transaction cost was, the commissions. And I'm like, and half my family was real estate, right? Growing up, and half is financial advisors. So I'm like, why wouldn't you be a real estate agent? She's like, well, do you think I can do it? I'm like, I know you could do it. There's no question about that. In fact, I think it'd be even better for our family moving forward and opportunity, but let's just do the transactions for ourselves. See how much money you would save. If you save that much amount of money by just becoming a real estate agent, that's like a year's worth of salary where you're working right now.
Right.
So I sort of did the cost benefit analysis. I said, and you have your free time and you started a separate career. So Jennica then went on the, she again just jumped on the train. We in terms of like, okay, I'm on board. Let's figure this out. She started out with a company that was a completely geared towards training real estate agents out here. And basically she had 3 days in Temecula, which is like an hour and a half away.
Wow.
3 weeks in Temecula, hour and a half away. My parents came out to sort of take care of our kids. We had 3 little kids under 5, 3 kids under 5.
Wow.
And she went, 3 weeks in a row, drove up and down every day, 3 hours a day, basically, to Temecula for training. Passes her test, and then all of a sudden now she's in real estate. So, and we sort of ham and egged it with our careers, right? I supported her. She supported me. She supported me. I supported her. We had the conversations of what we wanted, what we had envisioned for us later on. Like, here's where we are today, but like, okay, if you were to get a teaching job, we could have summers and then we can go on vacation with our kids. Or, hey, we're doing a lot of real estate right now. Why wouldn't we save that for ourselves, right? Sort of pick up sort of, and then we get sort of the education. And then from your, expertise, we become very dangerous. Maybe we could even do more real estate, which we did. We became very, very dangerous as it relates to that. But it was that partnership that we had, that dynamic that we had of supporting each other, sacrificing for each other, and just making it work. But loving it when it was making less than $5 an hour, right? I think that's the key. Those are special times. Those are times that if you were to ask her today, she remembers it just like I do. But that's how we should start out. Everyone should start out somewhere because you don't start out with a 6-figure job right out of the gate.
Right.
You got to start out where you have to prove your way and work your way up.
Right. I love that story. And I think that it really just shows the importance of choosing people in your life, whether it's a spouse or friends or who you call your family, just choosing people that support you like that and are willing to make sacrifices like that, especially when you are just starting out or whether it's when you're older too. I think that is so important.
Very much so. And it's the network that you surround yourself, your family, your friends, your partner, your spouse, all of that peer group influence. Find positive people in your life, people that you're attracted to that are healthy, and they are fans of you and they're going to support you. And that's important. Take out those people that are not going to be supportive.
Right.
Identify them and then weed them out.
Right.
It'll be healthier, hard in the short term, healthier in the long term.
Right. It's great advice. Now that we heard that great story, Jennica just so happens to be in the office. I think it would be great to have her on to talk more about it too.
I think you guys are setting me up here. I didn't know she was here today, so this is going to be fun. Let's do it. Let's have her in.
Okay, awesome. Thank you everyone for watching. This episode is sponsored by Jennica Shine Wealth Management. We've been in the Coachella Valley for 40 years and we're built for the next 40 years. You can find us at blankyshinewealthmanagement.com. And now back to the episode.
Well, I'm excited to have a special guest join us on the Few podcast today, Jennica Shine.
Yay.
Welcome, Jennica.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Jennica, let's learn about who you are, who you're married to, what you do, and tell us a little bit about Jennica Shine.
Oh gosh, how long do you have? It's quite in depth, but I will tell you, married to this funny guy named Rob, and we've been together about 30 years. Spent the first portion of that time together raising our family of 4. And when our kids were really young, we just ended up needing to buy and sell our own property. So I got my real estate license and have been building a business ever since.
You've excellent what you do. And not only as a mother, an incredible mother.
Oh, you just have to say that.
Not really. And an incredible wife, daughter, aunt, caretaker, backbone, support, everything you do is really, really incredible. So I just wanted to get that on record that I said that right now.
You should. You should. You know what? I'm going to play that back over and over again.
This will be your favorite episode for sure. And we'll have a continuous feedback loop for
anytime when you're not.
We'll just make it your ringtone.
When you're not cleaning the dishes, I'll just play this for you.
We'll make it your ringtone for sure. Well, you know, you have a career, you're a mother, you're, a partner, you do so much. How do you find balance in life? Because life is always coming at you and there's always curveballs and there's always stress, right? There's always all of this. And, you might not be the only one going through this. So how do you deal with it?
I guess I like to think of myself, I've always been a pretty tough kid growing up and a tough woman kind of in the world today. And I think I kind of look at myself as, in the past, I've thought of myself as not quite a nurturer when it came to being a mom. But in actuality, my nurturing comes in a different form rather than the cuddles and the snuggles. I'm a problem solver. And so with our children, they always just knew they could come to us, and me in particular, to help solve their problems. So I think carrying that forward into real estate has really helped me because, ultimately, one of the biggest purchases or sales anyone will ever make in their life is their home. And I think it's really important.
Stressful.
Yeah, it's very emotional. And to be that kind of backbone and that kind of support for other people is just kind of something that bleeds itself into a natural fit for me, from being a nurturer and caregiver to my children to nurturing and caregiving to my clients. That's
great. And a couple of things I've learned from you is, one of them would be let go and let God, right? On a lot of things.
You have to.
You just have to believe. And then the other component is, you say this to me all the time, which is great. You only have to start worrying when there's time. Wait, what is it?
Something to worry about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can start worrying when there's something to worry about, but don't worry about something that's not there, that's manifest.
Absolutely. I mean, you could waste a lot of your life doing that.
Waste a lot of your life about that.
Yeah. And most things that you do worry about, unfortunately, unless medical, are solvable. So worrying about them, in too much advanced time or with too much notice just wastes your time, and you end up not living life to its fullest. So when there's a problem, you'll know it. And then you surround yourself with the right people to help you solve it.
I still admire that because I'm also a planner by nature, right? That's what I do. And
you do.
I'm constantly looking at calendars, right?
Yeah.
We've got 3 kids in college now and 1 in high school, and we have all had, all of them have been student athletes. And for me to survive it, let's say, make certain that my business is intact, I got to have fill out the calendar first for, family and work.
Sure.
And, begging my children to put on their athletic schedules. Because as, a dad, I want to be there for as much as I can, if not all. That would be ideal.
Well, planning is important, but you have to incorporate
having
flexibility.
all that go out when you have this perfect calendar, this perfect plan.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, after work, you're like, why are you, in La Quinta, the game's at Palm Desert? Like, that's not what it said on the schedule. You're like, oh yeah, well, they changed that in an email earlier today. I'm like, I haven't been working all day. I got 500 emails.
Well, that's what you and I have a little bit of a tussle about every once in a while, is because you're such a planner. Doing what I do, I can plan all I want, and then that just goes up in smoke. So the ability to be flexible is also something that affords you the opportunity to be helpful and be supportive and be able to be a problem solver, is to have your plan blow up in smoke.
I'm going to get you a t-shirt that says, my give a damn's busted.
Probably. Well, it's my my calendar's busted.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So that's part of being a mom. You know, you can have your day planned out perfectly, but somebody comes home sick, you know, there's a car accident, somebody's got an issue. You have to stop everything and you have to be able to roll with the punches. And, you know, those are problems that you can't plan for. You can't worry about them. They exist and you solve them, but flexibility is really important.
One of the things that you've done very well is build out your team. Because as a woman, you're a primary caregiver, not only for your immediate family, but for your entire family.
Yeah.
And what we've learned from, you know, the few is it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to reach out. And more importantly, in our industry, what we do is we don't take over, right? You're in control. You're the one that's driving the bus. You're, you know, captain of the team and owner of the team. But at the end of the day, you want to have somebody like us from the wealth management industry and space to be in your corner so that you can make the wisest, highest and best use decision, financially speaking, or somebody who, by the way, we've seen this all day long and you're not the only one going through this. And we've seen this before. So here is a potential solution that you might want to, we submit for consideration, that you then have the ability and say, wait a minute, I didn't think of that problem. I'll solve that problem that particular way. And you're like, wait a minute. And so you have a partner when you build out your team, especially in the financial world, that is there with you shoulder to shoulder. So I think that's where, from the Society of the Few, what we're trying to do is build that community and that outreach, whether you build that team, you build that network of advice so that, yeah, it's all about, you know, who's around in your circles to help you do the right thing. Because another thing is that, you know, women always want to do the right thing the right way.
The first time.
And perfectly.
Yeah.
And you don't have to suffer through it.
Yeah.
No, you don't have to suffer through it.
You don't. I mean, I think it's like that with anything in life. You know, what do they say? You're only as good as the lowest common denominator out of the 5 people you surround yourself with. So, you know, always being in an environment where you can put your roots down, like we have for the last 30 years, for me, my whole life in this valley, allows you to kind of create not only longevity in a network of people, but also be quite selective as time goes on and make sure that you're picking those right people so that when the time does come and you do have something to worry about and there is a problem and you have to solve it, you know, you're really confident that you've selected the right people to surround yourself with that are going to be the first people that you call, and they're going to be the ones that are the quickest ones to solve it.
So, Jennica, tell us a little bit more. Let's dig deeper in sort of your career, right? You were, when we met, we were in college. You were studying broadcast journalism. At a college, you were a producer for ABC Affiliate in Tucson, Arizona.
Yep.
And I remember very vividly, it was every Saturday night, you know, 5, 6, and 10, you were there, and you're sitting there.
Different than nowadays.
You're producing the news.
Yep.
And for us to spend time together, because you were working and I'm still finishing school, but it was our date night while you're working.
Yep.
You're in the control room. You're producing right out of college.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you're running a
Live
control
TV.
and you're watching live TV. And you're at ABC, but we're still watching Saturday Night Live.
Well, we gave 3 minutes to sports, so what else are you going to do?
And I was so stressed because I was like, why aren't you paying attention to, and you guys were, the whole control room was watching Saturday Night Live at the time.
Right.
And that's when Saturday Night Live was actually good.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were sitting there watching that, and you're like flying the plane.
How cool did you think I was back then?
I couldn't believe it. Yes, very cool, very sexy. For me, I was stressed.
I know, you were pacing.
I was like, you're not paying attention. It's like when I drive right now, I'm not paying attention to the road and you're stressed. So it's the same
thing.
Same scenario, but different. Okay, so beyond that, we move out here, Coachella Valley. We raise a family shortly, a few years later. And then tell me about your career journey then.
Yeah, so we moved out here, 99. And, I was working for a top 25 market in Tucson. Had dabbled a little bit in broadcast journalism out here in high school, and I wasn't really interested in kind of pursuing that out here. So kind of in the interim, we figured out that we were going to put me back through school and become a teacher. And so I was going to go get my teaching credential because I wanted to be able to, we both knew that we wanted not only a family, but a fairly large family. So I thought it was the best case scenario, and the most logical next step is to teach myself how to teach children. So that would benefit our kids too. But ultimately it was also because, working things like retail or doing other things was taking time away from.
Which you did when you were out here.
Yeah. I think I've done almost every job that exists out there. But yeah, it was taking time away from, our free time together. So I needed to find something that, gave me my nights and weekends and some summer breaks and things like that would be helpful for us. But then eventually just, we started our family, and after Ashley, our third daughter, was born, 3 kids under 3 years old, and the boom of the real estate market in the early 2000s, we were buying and selling homes every 2 years, either having a baby or buying and selling a home.
There was times where we bought one home after another, and we moved from one home to another home, and we didn't unpack our boxes because we knew that was just the real estate market was hot. And we knew that we were just gonna, we're just like, we're just riding our time for the 2 year mark, and then we're going to move on. And that was really setting us up for the future, which was a blessing. But at the same time, I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute.
That's when you said,
Jen, why wouldn't you become a real estate agent, especially just for our own family?
Right.
The amount of thousands of dollars. If you were to be an agent and save us, that's the equivalent to 1 year's worth of, working.
You're like, wow, you're a valuable asset to our family as a mom. Now you need to be even more valuable.
Yeah,
financially.
Exactly. So that would, I empowered you financially speaking in terms of got to get it back out there, education. Yeah. And I knew you could do it and then some. And that's what you did. You just jumped right in.
Yeah, ultimately just getting it so that I could, save us some commission fees and work for our own financial gain going forward. But also just, the good part about that was learning how much I really did enjoy it. It is a high stressful 30 to 45 days for anyone buying or selling a home, but it also is extremely emotional, but it can be a really wonderful time to get to be a part of other people realizing their dreams. So you sell the intangible, I get to sell the tangible.
Theirs is way more fun. Way more fun. That's for sure.
You can touch it.
Yeah. That's what she said.
No, stop.
Yeah, you got to hit that one.
Of course you did. That's why I married you.
Jennica Shine, thank you for coming to our show today. And what we're going to do is we're going to invite you back. Thank you for joining us today on the Few podcast. And we're going to have like sort of a little sidebar, right? Well, we're going to call it an episode within an episode. We're going to call it Shine on Markets.
Yes.
I'll cover the financial and you'll cover the real estate. Yep. And maybe on a quarterly basis, we can discuss what's happening. We can have a discussion about what's happening in your world with real estate. Are people ready to buy? Is that pent up demand right there? And everyone's waiting for the anticipation of interest rates to dip. And then what do I do? Do I jump on it? Do I wait further? Yeah. Does the Federal Reserve actually slow down the process of sales simply because people see the interest rate coming down by 50 basis points? But wait, why wouldn't I just wait for another 50 basis points? Therefore, the demand dries up because everyone's anticipating. And there's a backlog in the world of real estate. I mean, those are kind of conversations where I like talking about, and I know that you have a lot of knowledge on, and we can talk about the real estate market, and then I can bore you. I can bore you with the financial markets, and if you're sitting here, you can't hide.
You're gonna make me sit here.
You're gonna have to smile.
I can't get up and go do something at home.
Yeah, exactly.
Sounds great. Well, we'll use a crystal ball, and we'll do our best to decide what's going to happen in the future because everything's up for grabs now. So. We'll see. That's
why everyone needs to tune in.
Yeah.
We have to have provide some advice and provide our thoughts and go from there.
One thing you know for sure, what's never going to stop is people needing to buy a home or sell a home.
And change.
Got that. And change. That's inevitable.
Jennica Shine, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again next time.
Thanks a lot.
Well, thank you for joining us. That was a great discussion just a minute ago. And thank you for joining us for our family edition on the 7 Keys. Next is Network of Advice. But before we leave you, let's end with a quote once again as it relates to family values, and everything we just discussed right now. This is a great one. I love this one from Roy Disney. And he goes, "It's not hard to make decisions once you know what your values are." Again, we started with values, what your mission, your vision, your why is. Have a family structure, have a family sort of value structure so that you can do this. And then the money will follow as it relates to what's important, as it relates to your social impact, how you want to prioritize your savings and everything else that you want to do, whether it's yourself or your partner, your spouse, or your, whoever's in your life. It's important to have these money conversations, start with the values. And that's what Roy Disney has given us. And don't ever forget, this is another great quote. You'll love this one too. And it basically says, "I love lending people money and never getting it back. Said no one ever." So bottom line is that, we all have those dynamics within friends and family, lending and borrowing. Hope we enjoyed some of the tips and tricks today. Keep joining us, like and subscribe. We're going to continue to follow up on that and provide what we see on our side, sort of the best advice, little gems here and there that can hopefully help you in your day-to-days, because we're all in this together. And thanks for watching.
This podcast is brought to you by David Field, producer. It is produced and directed by David Field and Kristen George. And its mix, edit, and socials by Kristen George. Blanky Shine Wealth Management is a group of investment professionals registered with Hightower Services, LLC, member FINRA and SIPC, and with Hightower Advisors, LLC, a registered investment advisor with the SEC. Securities are offered through Hightower Securities, LLC. Advisory services are offered through Hightower Advisors, LLC. This is not an offer to buy or sell securities. No investment process is free of risk, and there is no guarantee that the investment process or the investment opportunities referenced herein will be profitable. Past performance is not indicative of current or future performance and is not a guarantee. The investment opportunities referenced herein may not be suitable for all investors. All data and information referenced herein are from sources believed to be reliable. Any opinions, news, research, analysis, prices, or other information contained in this research is provided as general market commentary. It does not constitute investment advice. Blanky Shine Wealth Management and Hightower shall not in any way be liable for claims and make no expressed or implied representations or warranties as to the accuracy or completeness of the data and other information, or for statements or errors contained in or omissions from the obtained data and information referenced herein. The data and information are provided as of the date referenced. Such data and information are subject to change without notice. This document was created for informational purposes only. The opinions expressed are solely those of Blanky Shine Wealth Management and do not represent those of Hightower Advisors, LLC, or any of its affiliates.